Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ladies Room Talk Show. I'm Clarissa Kenty, your Kingdom Concierge, and I am so glad that you're joining me here tonight. We're going to really have a great show, and I want you to go ahead and share this live with all of your friends, your family, the pages that you're a part of, the groups that you're a part of, because we're going to have a historical moment here tonight, and I know that you are going to absolutely love the show. So go ahead and share your post. Go ahead and share this live. We want to welcome all of our YouTube family. Thank you for joining us here tonight as well. This is a opportunity we can have conversation. We have some great people here that will love to answer your questions as it relates to A.G. Gaston and A.G. Gaston's Motel that we recently had a groundbreaking kind of ceremony, more of a ribbon cutting ceremony that was really nice. The Ladies Room Talk Show was there. ICU Media was there. And so we really did have a phenomenal time at the ribbon cutting. And we're excited about what's being revived in Birmingham, Alabama. And also, speaking of Birmingham, listen. We had an amazing historical moment for the last 2 weeks in Birmingham, Alabama. Those of you who are not in Birmingham, listen, we had the World Games 2022. It was phenomenal. You know, they had everything that really suits what you like, and it really depends on what you want to do. And so we did, my husband and I, my children, we did what we wanted to do as it related to the World Games. And it had so many sports that you can go to, events, entertainment, and the amazing vendors who were out there at the World Games. Let me tell you, we had a great time supporting everyone. I had friends that participated. My own daughter participated in the World Games. I am super pumped and super excited. So let me go ahead and just start off by saying thank you. Thank you to Mayor Randall Woodfin, who is the mayor of Birmingham, Alabama, for bringing this event to the city. I think it did so many great things for us. I want to thank his staff and everyone who played a part in ensuring that the World Games was one of the best World Games of all times. And also, I want to thank you, Birmingham. The Ladies Room Talk Show decided to go live on last week. We went live on the City Walk, and we decided to showcase all of the vendors who were there at the City Walk, Birmingham. Why? Because there were some concerns for the vendors that were there, saying that the foot traffic just was not what they were expecting and they needed more. They had their products there. They were set up. They were really ready to do what they needed to do. However, the support was not there. The advertisement was not there. So I said to myself, what can I do to help my fellow business owners? I am a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my own business. I do that full time. So I know what it means to make sure that you're able to put your business out there. I know what it means when you're preparing a service or a product and not really have the support that's behind it. I know what that feels like and I know what that means. But as a fellow entrepreneur, I want to make sure that I'm doing my part to help out my fellow entrepreneurs. And so that's what I did. We went out there, guys. We had almost 2,000 views on our Ladies Room Live remote at City Walk in Birmingham for the World Games. And let me tell you, I think it really made an impact. It made a difference. I saw where foot traffic was starting to increase. People were texting me, let me know, hey, we went out there. It was great. They were tagging me, hey, we're on the move. We're out there. We're going out there. So I'm just grateful and very thankful that I was able to use this platform to help our fellow vendors out there. And kudos to all of you who are vendors. You did a wonderful time. The volunteers with the World Games, I had some really great friends who are volunteers. You did a phenomenal job, able to watch your lives. You did a great job. So I'm excited about what you did as well. And again, to Mayor Woodfin and his entire staff and team, kudos to you. Birmingham really set the bar for the World Games 2022. Now, I want to invite you guys to hang out here with me. If you're just popping on, welcome to the Ladies Room Talk Show. I'm Clarissa Kenty, your Kingdom Concierge and your host for the show here tonight. Also want to let you know that we have some great guests. Now, one of our guests is already in the lobby. I'm going to bring him in. These two guests are no strangers to the Ladies Room Talk Show. They've been here before, and so we're going to be bringing them back because we're talking about some great things. Rochelle Malone is on her way to the virtual lobby, and once I see her pop in, I will bring her into the live as well. But until then, I want to bring back to the Ladiez Room Talk Show, Barry McNealy. I should have had a drum roll or something.
Not at all. Not at all.
No. Barry, how are you?
I am, as Colonel Stone Johnson would say, blessed by the best.
All right. Now, I'll agree with that, and I'm going to take that for myself because I believe the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I've been looking at your concierge, and I've been wondering, how did you come about that title?
That title, you know what? That's a darn good question, Barry, and I'm going to answer it right here. You know, when I started the Ladiez Room Talk Show, the goal was to provide information to people. And if people had questions about certain things or needed answers about things, I wanted this to be a foundation that will be able to do that will be able to bring information to people and make people aware of what's going on, not just locally, but globally, nationally, around the world. And we've been able to do that. And so the Kingdom Concierge came up, where I believe that I'm a servant of the Most High King. And so I like to look at myself as being one that if there are people out there who have questions about anything, especially about the word, especially about kingdom living, I want to be that kingdom concierge where somebody can call me, they have a question, I have the answer for them about kingdom living. And so that's where the title came from, the Kingdom Concierge. Because when you go to hotels, when you need a question about something, the best hotels, or you have a question about anything, who do you call?
Call the concierge.
Call the concierge, and they have the answers for you. So that's where it came from. It's really kingdom and biblically based.
I'm loving that.
Yes, that's where it came from. That's a good question, Barry. Thanks for asking.
Well, so you switched it. You're supposed to ask the questions.
No, you know, we family, Barry. You know how Miles do it. You know what? Let me just digress for a minute. What did you watch, or were you at the closing yesterday at the World Games?
I watched the closing. I was not there in person.
I watched it as well. Did our alma mater not represent the mighty Golden Bears?
As usual.
As if.
I don't think we know any other way to do that. So when we show up, we show out. And
I know. I felt really good just to see our drum majors come out. And, you know, when we were at Miles, we didn't have anything. You know, everything, we're kind of starting from ground one. We had you and Ernest on the football team doing y'all's thing. But, you know, well, wait a minute now. I can take a little credit. I was a part of the dance team. So we was like the first reviving of the band, you know. We tried our best. You know, Allison was on the dance team as well. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Yes. See, we were trying to bring it back. So, but really, Miles College showed out yesterday. They really did a good job, and I'm very proud of them for doing that. But let's talk about A.G. Gaston for a moment, and I'm hoping that Rochelle will be able to come in, and I'm going to be looking at my phone, hoping that she's going to pop in any minute. But let's talk about the A.G. Gaston Motel. You know, a couple of weeks ago, I want to say it may have been the week prior to the World Games, the opening of the World Games, there was a ribbon cutting for the A.G. Gaston Motel. Mm-hmm. So let's do a little background history on that, because that hotel had been closed. Do you know how long it had been closed?
Well, you know, at one point, it wasn't a hotel any longer, and it was an assisted living facility. But even that had been closed for over 20 years.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
So what was it that said, okay, we're going to revive this, or we're going to, you know, renovate it and open it back up? I mean, what was the reasoning behind that? I found it to be interesting.
Well, the idea of the Gaston was you had a friends of the Gaston to come together, and people who were interested in the preservation of that history and also the preservation of the facility. And of course, they advocated, along with Terry Sewell and so many others, for Birmingham's current status as a national historic monument. You know, we are at the precipice of telling our story to the entire world now that the the National Park Service is involved, and the Department of the Interior is going to, support this national monument. And we have to give kudos to President Barack Obama for signing this designation in 2017. And this is going to be a way for us to take the history that exists in that like 1 square block area. There is so much history, so much United States history. And now it's being preserved, and people are coming from around the world, and people are coming from around the country, and they're bringing their national park passbooks with them and getting them stamped. And this is one of the places that people are visiting, like they visit the Grand Canyon, or like they visit Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, or like to go and visit the Brown versus Board of Education site in Topeka, Kansas. We always were on that level, but now we're being recognized as being a part of that milieu, and it's only good for Birmingham.
I love that. When you look at that central nucleus of that area there, you have the Civil Rights Institute. Right beside that, you have the 16th Street bombing, the church that was bombed. You have across that the Kelly Ingram Park. You have across there the A.G. Gaston building within itself. And across there, you have Win Radio. That was actually Win Radio was open back when I first came to Alabama. To Birmingham. I actually did an interview there as Miss Black USA. And so it has a lot of history there for Win Radio. So it's just, everything is just kind of closely knit in that block of businesses. And so I found it to be pretty cool that they're opening it back up again. So will it actually be an actual motel where people can go in and get a room? Or is it more of a historical exhibit?
Well, not trying to land on both sides of the fence, but the question that you asked deals with the idea that the western side, which is the 1954 side, the original side, that is in the hands of the Department of the Interior and the National Park Service, and that will be used for exhibits and programming, and that's where their footprint will be.
Right.
But the other side of the fence is that the eastern side of the Gaston is a later addition, and that part of the Gaston is still within the hands of and control of the city of Birmingham. And so what's to be done with that side of the Gaston has not been announced as of yet. But it is a substantial property, and with the imagination of City Hall and people like Denise Gilmore, I'm sure that there will be something outstanding for the district and the city in that area.
When I had an opportunity to go to the ribbon cutting, and it was just really neat to see. It was very well attended. It was kind of rainy that day, but it was well attended. A lot of media people were there getting good footage. We got a couple of good shots on some things there ourselves. ICU Media was there and got a couple of things. I have a brief clip I'm going to show in a few minutes that will kind of give people a sneak preview of the exhibit side of things. They had amazing, I think it was the Birmingham Repertoire Theater that did kind of like a reenactment and had a spoken word and different things. It was just a great ceremony. It was very timely. They had a panel discussion that was on there. Rochelle Malone was there. Rochelle is the great granddaughter of A.G. Gaston, and she was on that panel along with a couple other people. And then Miss Doris, I think. I can't remember Doris's last name, but she was the personal assistant to A.G. Gaston. And I've known her for a couple of years, and I actually had her on the Ladiez Room talk show a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and she shared her experience as being the personal assistant of A.G. Gaston, the things that she learned and was able to be exposed to by such a great giant in the business industry. So I'm really excited about what they're doing with the Gaston Hotel or Motel. I think it's the proper term is motel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. So what I want to do now is I want to show a brief clip of a few pictures that ICU Media was able to grab um, on that day to kind of show people and give them a peek of what it looks like as far as a few things of the exhibit. Okay.
Okay.
All right, guys. Look, we're kind of disconnected there a little bit. I don't know what happened. We're having a storm here for those of you who are not in the Birmingham area, and I believe that our internet is a little shaky. So, but I hope you guys were able to enjoy that video because it was able to show a little bit of the exhibits and the different things that's inside of that. And like you said before, there's two sides to that motel. There's a side that's historical. It has the historical data, the background of A.G. Gaston, how things got started, how he got started with his business ventures. And, you know, I think we have a great person that's on the show because you can tell us a little bit more, Barry, about some of the other businesses. How many businesses did A.G. Gaston have in total?
You know, I'm going to let you count and I'll talk. And if I miss one, then maybe we can get some comments.
Okay, but first of all, do I have enough fingers?
I don't think so.
You're probably right.
When we think of A.G. Gaston, we have to actually give credit to a person that created in a large way. I won't say single-handedly, but in a large way, he's responsible for Birmingham's Black middle class. There were so many opportunities opened up by A.G. Gaston. Prior to Gaston, there were good jobs in Birmingham in terms of a financial standing. There was the railroad, there were coal mines, there were limestone quarries, there were 13 fully formed blast furnaces, and people of color were 65% of the labor force in those steel mills. So there were good jobs, but when Gaston comes along, he's going to open the door to so many things that didn't exist for Black people. Yeah. And as his business philosophy clearly stated, he was trying to find a need and fill it. And so when we start talking about those businesses, you start off with the Booker T. Washington Insurance Company. Yeah. Then he's going to go into business with his father-in-law, and he's going to open the Smith and Gaston Funeral Home. He's going to purchase a cemetery. And, you know, another one of those things that people always said about A.G. Gaston is that he had you from the cradle to the grave. And so when you think of the insurance company, the funeral home, the cemetery, you know, he literally did have you from one step to the other. Right. He added to that with a bottling company, which interestingly enough was really the only Gaston enterprise that wasn't overwhelmingly successful. But he opened Citizens Federal Bank. The city of Birmingham was without a Black bank for a couple of decades before he opened up Citizens Federal, you know, after the first Black bank pioneered by the pastor of 16th Street Baptist Church Reverend Dr. William Pettiford, in the Alabama Penny Savings Bank, when it went out of business, there wasn't a black bank. And so when we start thinking of these businesses, you were just talking about the radio station. On the top floor of that building, Gaston had the Booker T. Washington Business School. It was initially in the Smithfield community. He opened so many different opportunities that he actually, his wife ran a business college to teach clerical skills and office things that people needed and that they were excluded from, because education for people of color in the Birmingham area was always a challenge. And though that's that need and fill it again, he even stepped into the educational sphere and provided assistance there. I'm not done with the businesses. There's the construction company. There's the Boys and Girls Club. Mm-hmm. I don't know where we are on your fingers yet, but
I think I'm just about out, I'll stop you there, Barry, because he has so many really good quotes that he has, but one of the ones that I use as a part of my mantra is find a need and fill it.
Yes.
Find a need and fill it. And no matter how big or small the need, if you find it, fill it. And so that's one of the things that really pushed me out last Monday to go out to City Walk and just take my show live as a live remote to showcase these vendors. Why? Because a need was identified, which meant that vendors had a need for the word to get out that they were at City Walk. People needed to know who was out there, and they needed to be showcased. And that's why I went out there. It wasn't that anyone pushed me out there to do it or made me do it. I saw a need. And that need was they were hurting financially. See, the thing about being in business, Barry, and this, is that especially if you're doing products, and most of them were doing products out there, if you're selling pastries, that means you're already anticipating a certain amount of people coming through to sell your merchandise. So pastries are longest expensive to make if you're going to make it right. And so now you have all of these pastries that you have in 100-degree weather. You're expecting so many hundreds of people to come through, but they're not coming through. And so now you're taking the pastries that you've spent money on and you're losing money more than you're making it. And so I heard the cry of the people. And so I'm glad that other people were doing the same thing and, using what you have to get out there and help other people. There's never a time that we should not help people. That's what we're here to do.
And when you think of Gaston's legacy, those vendors out there and you yourself, you all are in that legacy, because he not only was a businessman for himself, he was a businessman for the Birmingham Black community that was downtrodden in so many different ways. Yeah. And when we talk about Gaston, it's just, I want to get this one thing in because I don't want it to be forgotten. The idea of excellence at the turn of the 20th century made people of color a target. If you were doing something that was laudable, then there would be a backlash from the overall zeitgeist of white supremacy that existed in our country. When we think of places like Rosewood, and when we think of places like Tulsa, Oklahoma with the Black Wall Street, we think of the works of Ida B. Wells Barnett. She talked about this idea that when people of color were successful, they had to kind of watch their backs. And I want people to understand that Gaston was wealthy. He was, in today's dollars, I don't think it's even worth arguing over how close to a billionaire he would be.
Right.
But the thing is that with that great wealth, he also had to navigate the racial strictures of his time. And that navigation was something that would play on you in a psychological sense, because in the city of Birmingham, Black people made up 43% of the population, but they were only allowed to live in 11% of the residential territory. And I know that's a little wonkish, but to make it make sense to what I'm trying to say is that you could have a good job working in the coal mine or working on the railroad or working with one of Gaston's industries,
Right.
but you still might be relegated to living in a shotgun house because that's the only place you could live. Gaston, being one of the wealthiest men, Black or white, in the state of Alabama, would have to walk into the colored entrance, which was sometimes around the back of facilities that he could buy without a dent in his treasure chest. He could buy the facility, but in order for him to do business there, he'd have to walk into the colored entrance. Can you imagine what it would be to have what we would consider, you and I would consider, all the money in the world, but still have to walk into a colored entrance?
You know, it's funny because, you know, sometimes when we talk to our children and younger people, and they're like, man, I couldn't have lived in that day. I would have bust down the door. I would have done this and I would this. And I really believe they would have. You know, my dad was one of those. He was a part of the civil rights movement in South Carolina. And he was put in jail on a couple of occasions because he refused to go in the back door. So, you know, and I've heard his stories, and they were amazing stories and very heroic stories of things that he's done throughout his lifetime when he was a young guy to make sure that he left a legacy that he pushed through, and he would not allow those types of things to hinder him from being able to experience what he felt was the best life. And so, and Allison had just mentioned that she likes your shirt, Equality. And I'm sure you wore that on purpose. I love it. I love it. I love it. Barry, we're going to bring Rochelle Malone in. I see that she's in the lobby right now. So we're going to bring her in so she can give us a take of some of the things that she remembers as being the great granddaughter of A.G. Gaston and the impact that he has made on her life. Because Barry, I'm glad we're able to have you on as well, because you're such a wealth of knowledge. You are a walking encyclopedia. And so I don't know if a lot of the young folks know what an encyclopedia is, because they don't sell those anymore. Everything is on the web. But you are a wealth of knowledge, and you have so much information to share. And I don't think I even have enough time on my show for you to share with us everything that you know. And so your knowledge far exceeds you, because you're a young guy, but you have so much knowledge, like you're 92 years old. You know, it's the intelligence and it's the research and all the things that you've done. You are a historian of history, and big kudos to you. So we're going to go ahead and bring Rochelle in to join us. Barry, Rochelle Malone, welcome back to the Ladiez Room. How are you?
Thank you so much. Hello, Clarissa. And hello, Barry. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. It is a pleasure to be here. I apologize for just getting in, but I had a lot of technical difficulties for some reason, but I think it was just so that Barry could really open up and share all of that knowledge that he had with the viewers. Just a little bit that I heard. I'm just not scared, because I can remember as a little girl, but not a lot of memories, but going in a different entrance to a restaurant. One of his favorite restaurants, one of my grandfather's favorite restaurants, was Joy Young, that was downtown. It was a Chinese restaurant. And I remember us going through a side entrance, coming through a kitchen, and sitting in a booth area, you know, close to the kitchen area. But I never really asked any questions, you know. Now, I don't know if it was that he couldn't go through the front door, or at that time, because I was a little girl. I was born in 65. So I was born after all of, the racial tension and thing. Well, things were kind of going out. We were going into another direction by the time I got up to where I could.
Rochelle, it sounds like you were walking in favor.
Yes, yes.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Right, you're right. Walking in a lot of favor. So my memories with him, lunch was the thing that we did together when I would come, especially when I would come home from college. But even before I went to college, I would go down to his office to meet him at his office, and we would go to lunch. And that would be his time when he would just share different stories with me. However, within each story, there was a lesson to be learned. We spent a lot of time, he spent a lot of time talking to me about the importance of, do you know why you don't season your food before you taste it? And understanding that said a lot about a person as to how they made decisions as to if they seasoned their food prior to tasting their food. And so he wanted to make sure that I was very knowledgeable on how to conduct myself in different settings, how to make decisions that would be not only beneficial for myself, but beneficial to people that I was going to be connected to, and what role I would play in making sure that I was productive and I could bring something to the table that was beneficial to help others.
Rochelle, when I hear your story, because I had an opportunity to hear it, which is a story that you had not shared with me. So I was really excited about that. I heard you share it at the ribbon cutting. I was like, wow, that's pretty neat. And so, but when I hear what Barry was talking about earlier, and I've heard some of the stories that you shared about him, and then other stories that people have shared, what I realized about A.G. Gaston, and did not have the pleasures of meeting him, but what is very consistent across the board is how he valued relationships. How he valued relationships. And I think that's kind of a lost art, Barry, that people really don't value them anymore. They connect with a person to get what they want to get out from them. And once they're done with them, they move on to someone else. And so when you have the luxuries or the pleasures to connect with someone, it's good to find out, well, how can I bless you? How can you bless me? Can we do an iron sharpening iron type thing? How can we help build each other up? How can we grow each other? Because I think that's the will of the Father, so that, more and more people are coming into the earth. And as we cross paths, I believe this is intentional. I don't think it's happenstance or just, I just ran across, or I'm just out in the area. No, I believe that God crosses people's paths. And I think A.G. Gaston was a genius in building relationships and valuing those relationships, finding people who may have a need. Not only did he just look at a community and say, I see there's a need, let me fill it, but he was looking at individuals and understanding what their needs were. When I hear the testimonies of people who worked for him or worked with him, I would always hear about what he did for them, how he blessed them, how he poured into their lives, how he helped them start this and helped them start that, with, no strings attached, not expecting something or you owe me. That is something that I have heard so much, Rochelle and Barry. If someone does something for you, they don't do it just to do it and be done with it. They do it with the intentions in the back of them, in their minds. I'm going to need them one day. Just remember, you owe me. I mean, I don't get it. I just don't get it. But A.G. Gaston was a genius for that. Of course, I didn't know him personally, but just based on what everybody is saying about him, he really genuinely and truly wanted to help people and really love people genuinely. And I think if he were to be here today, I wonder how proud and how happy he would be, how things have turned out thus far.
I just wanted to jump in a little bit, Clarissa, and also talk about the now and the then. And the now and the then of A.G. Gaston is a story of inspiration. When Gaston was alive, he wasn't the type of person to be a big I and a little U kind of person. His wealth was not something that he rubbed in people's faces. In fact, he used his wealth to try to uplift others. And we could all take a lesson from that. Whereas instead of, how the old adage says, don't look down on somebody unless you're trying to help them up.
There you go.
Well, that's the kind of person that Gaston was. And his legacy is, we talk about money, power, respect, and, I'm going to get mine. Right. But this man worked until he was over 100 years old when he had gotten his already. He was working for others.
Right.
And when you create a business or a conglomerate in Gaston's case, when you create something like that, it takes on a life of its own, and it's a family, and you are at the head of that family, and you have a responsibility to try to make sure those opportunities that you're providing for people are still going to be there. And with the Gaston being a part of this national monument now, we don't have to look to Tulsa, Oklahoma for the Black Wall Street. Our young people in Birmingham, Alabama, they can look right down to Fifth Avenue North and see the excellence that was the Gaston Motel. And I've intentionally not said anything about the civil rights movement. I want to just lean on that idea of the inspiration that he was in a time when, like I said earlier, excellence in the Black community was something that would make you have to face greater and greater challenges to put you back in your place. And today in 2022, we don't have a place. The sky is the limit.
Yes.
And our launching pad can very well be the revitalized A.G. Gaston Motel.
Wow. That you really said a mouthful. You said a mouthful there, and it was all entangled with hope. All entangled with hope. You have really released the ball and chain. You have taken off the yoke of past hindrances and idiosyncrasies and thoughts of what we could not do and what we cannot do and what we are not allowed to do. If we don't do it, it's shame on us at that point.
Yeah.
If we don't do it. And I like the way you place that in the show. That's giving people hope. If there's anything that you want to do or desire to do, you, number one, don't have to wait for anybody to do it. You don't have to wait for folks to acknowledge you or to open up a door or introduce you to this person or that person. Make your way. Make your way. And Rochelle, that's something that I saw your grandfather do based on things that I've read, is that I never really saw him find a need. And before he filled the need, he went to this person to see if they can introduce me to this person, to see if I can get in with this person, and then see if this person get. No, it was, find a need, fill it, period. I mean, get rid of the middle stuff, get rid of the middleman. And it's biblical. It's really, really, really biblical. It's him following his path, following his truth. And if you see the need, that's because God has revealed the need to you. And that's a part of your purposeful plan in life. And I believe if we follow that plan, that's where our prosperity will come. That's where our increase will come. And that's where our joy will come. I'm sure every day was not rainbow and roses, but I do believe that every day was a day of fulfillment because he was in his divine purpose.
Exactly. And when I speak about my grandfather, I always refer to Ecclesiastes 3:1-8, that speaks of seasons and times. And he certainly was a man that was anointed and appointed for the season in which he was born and the time in which he was anointed to gift gift, GIFT, the African American community. How would he gift the community? He gifted the community through his giftings, which was, there is an art to relationship capital building, and he was anointed to do that. No, he didn't have to look for the individuals. Everyone that God connected him to played a vital role in how he would receive the resources he needed in order to help whomever he needed to help. And everybody that was connected to that source was also connected in some way. What he did in the time that he did it, there's no explanation other than he was anointed and appointed for that time. His life purpose was to bring a wealth of knowledge and financial support to a desolate community of people, to help them come into their place of promise. I truly believe that about my grandfather. If you read and if you talk to people around the city of Birmingham, even throughout the United States, he helped a lot of churches. There are numerous churches throughout the city who were able to build their buildings and burn their mortgages because my grandfather gave them the opportunity. I love to hear Senior Pastor Mike Moore from Faith Chapel give his testimony when he was seeking a loan to get started, and no one would give him that opportunity but my grandfather. And look what he has built, and look what he has done for the community through that one yes. So my grandfather understood the power of the yes. He understood the power of the no as well, because he understood that he couldn't say yes to all people, but there were yeses that needed to be made within the community that will give the African American community the economic edge that it needed in order to grow and to flourish and become the people that could actually nurture this country the way that we have.
So when we look at that, because Rochelle, what you're saying is how he was able at that time to cultivate a very prosperous community, to go in and develop economic growth in the underserved communities. And as Barry mentioned, to create a strong and forward-thinking middle-class family, middle-class people. So at this point, when we look at today, because Barry, you're able to touch a lot on yesterday, let's fast forward to today. And as we're wrapping up the show tonight, we are now those who are standing on his shoulders. What do we do with that positioning?
Well, I want to touch on something Rochelle said, and then I'll go forward. You know, when you talked about the yes and the no, another one of those things that A.G. Gaston provided was the courage and the feeling of being able to even ask the question in the first place. You know, that alone, being able to have the, courage to go in when so many doors have been slammed in people's faces for so long, just the idea that, this person at least will hear me out. But connecting that to today, I think that when we do look at Gaston's empire, as I mentioned a moment ago, I hadn't talked about the civil rights movement. Those things go hand in hand. The ability for access, doesn't mean a whole lot if you don't have the ability to finance that access. And Gaston was a person that brought both of those two things together. Dr. King said that there was 3 great evils in the world. It was war, racism, and poverty. And when we think of racism and poverty, both of those things were legend in Birmingham's Black community. And Gaston was such a large part of tearing those things down and allowing Birmingham's communities of color today to, just like you said a moment ago, stand on the shoulders of giants, knowing that they can accomplish what might seem to be something fanciful or a miracle. But no, it was just this person went to work for decades. This person sacrificed of himself working at 100 years old. I had this conversation with somebody the other night, and I forget who I was talking to. But one of the things I said to them is nobody can outwork you without your permission. Somebody can be smarter than you. They can be more talented than you, stronger than you, faster than you. Going back to me and the Miles College football thing, I never made it on the team. I struggled, but I worked as hard as I could.
Yes.
And the idea of his work ethic was something that people needed to see. And people needed to also see that when the wind blows in your face, you don't just give up. You keep going and you go to higher heights.
Wow.
And that's that's that legacy that he's left with a thriving Birmingham today. When I look at the World Games, like you opened up with, Clarissa, I think of the idea that Birmingham is really on the cusp of something really, really special.
Yes.
And that's not by accident. That is by the contributions of people like William Pettiford and A.G. Gaston and Fred Shuttlesworth and Dick Arrington. You have a list of people, that have Lucinda Roby and all these different people that have been a part of bringing us to where we are today. They put the keys in our hand. Now it's time to see if we can drive.
Wow. I love it. Very Allison Sanders says A.G. Gaston had an ambition and vision that was already prepared to serve a mission of movement for civil rights that was growing and pulsating the world, even in the state of financial inadequacy. He was able to use the hotel to house civil rights leaders.
She's totally correct. When Dr. King left Albany, Georgia in 1962, he'd been there for months, and the police chief there, Laurie Pritchett, was one of those I'm gonna throw rocks but I'm gonna hide my hands kind of persons. And he really tried to put on a wonderful, happy face for the community when the cameras were on. And as Dr. King tried to get the movement going there, he couldn't get the traction he needed. And so Fred Shuttlesworth invited him to come to Birmingham. But when Dr. King came to Birmingham, a part of him coming to Birmingham was the knowledge of the infrastructure that was already in place in this city. And the Gaston Enterprises were a pivotal part of that infrastructure that was already in place in Birmingham. And when they decided that they were going to have Project C, they started out with Project X. And it was X because they wanted to come to Birmingham, but they really didn't know exactly how and what they were going to do. And it was unknown. And, X is an unknown variable in mathematics. But when they decided after Palm Sunday that it was going to be Project C, they had their war room at the Gaston Motel. And Dr. King would always be afforded room number 30 at the Gaston Motel. And you have people who were in and out of that motel. Even we don't think about it that often, but the journalist that, Dr. King said the greatest disinfectant is sunlight. The world had to see what was going on in Birmingham.
Right.
And when the journalists would come to Birmingham, the white journalists a lot of times would find themselves staying at the Gaston Motel, because if they stayed anywhere else, they would be at threat. Their equipment would be stolen and destroyed.
Right.
And they would feel comfortable in the confines of the Gaston Motel. That motel was an incubator for Project C in Birmingham. It was the cradle of Project C in Birmingham. The idea of the Children's March was created within the confines of the Gaston Motel. And so when you think about Gaston not only letting them use the Gaston Motel, but he also let them use the Booker T. Washington Business College for their clerical needs, so they could contact the entire world. Gaston bailed Martin Luther King out of jail when he wrote the letter from a Birmingham jail. There are so many connections there that, a lot of people, might not appreciate how much of a part A.G. Gaston was to that movement. But I'll sit here and I'll say that he was one of the most pivotal people in Birmingham. It was Gaston that went to Birmingham's business community and told them, basically, black or white, Bull Connor's going to be the end of all of us. And that's when the city of Birmingham decided they needed to change the whole government in Birmingham in order to get rid of Bull Connor. There are so many strands that you could pull on when it comes to Gaston and his role in making Birmingham the Birmingham that it is right now.
That's so true. And the fact that all of what he did was not only birthed, but it was developed and it operated right there on Fifth Avenue, the corner where the playground is, right there by next to the museum, the hotel. That's where the original home, antebellum house that he purchased to start housing the heart of his businesses, right there, Fifth Avenue. And then the A.G. Gaston building across the street, and, educating African Americans clerically so that they could get jobs, to support their families. And not only here in Birmingham, but they were able to go up north and other states and secure jobs that weren't accessible to African Americans at that time. But because he gave them that opportunity with that educational piece, gave them the opportunity to bring in the finances to their families and send it back down here to Birmingham. It's just that entire district it flourishes because he planted right there in the heart of that district. And one of the next things that my family and I were working on, we've been working on this for several years, is to have Fifth Avenue North changed to A.G. Gaston Boulevard. It's long overdue. It should have been done while he was still living, for him to be able to have been able to see that. Although he probably would have said, "Oh, wow," he would have laughed at it, didn't think that was necessary to have, but he would have been honored. And, for people to let him know that, that avenue, that street, because of what he did there on that corner, paved the way for so many people that it should be an avenue, a boulevard that flags his name. And as people come down to the motel and beyond, he should be remembered. When they see his name on the street, it should, signify what Birmingham was built on and founded on, and how we have an obligation and a responsibility to continue the legacy that my grandfather started within our community, to be viable parts of society, economically, secure, and providing that type of security for our generations to come. I always say that my grandfather said, find a need and feel it. But the way things are set up, the way our young generation of people are positioned now, we really don't have to look for needs. We just have to choose a need and feel it. We just have to choose it and feel it. And not only feel the need, but make sure we're being the need for our young people that are coming our way. And it's important that they can get to know people like Barry, and conversate and talk to him, and get the history. The history needs to be told. Young people need to know who Dr. A.G. Gaston was, and the impact that his living is and can have on their lives and their futures.
Absolutely. I tell you what, it's so much more that we need to learn about A.G. Gaston, the ins and outs of his mythology and the way he thinks about things, the different tips of success for a business owner, for young people, how to run several streams of income, which is what they're saying. We need to have at least 6 streams of income that we need to have rolling in and out. And there's so much that we can learn from his legacy and the things that he's done by the proof. There's certain people that may get on and talk about different little things and how to do this and how to do that. But when you go and look at their personal lives, it doesn't match up. But when you think about A.G. Gaston and you read the things that he's done and his whole life has been laid out and unpackaged, you realize that the proof is in the pudding. You can look at what we have read and what he said, and what he said is what he did, and there is results. There's proof in the way that he said that he lived. And so for that, I am forever appreciative. I'm not a native of Alabama, but I've been here long enough to call myself such. And so I've been here long enough to know more about A.G. Gaston and to really value his principles and to value his legacy. I'm very intrigued with him as a business person, and being a business person myself, to learn even more the things that he used him to where he is today. A lot of times we like to go to the newest thing and the thing that's most faddish and all of that. What I found is that sometimes you have to go back to just plain old ABC. What worked, what's working. It doesn't have to be the greatest. It doesn't have to be the most hip or the most latest trends or whatever. What worked? So if I can go back to 1940, 1950, 1960, and I can look at a man that implemented policy, procedures, the wherewithal of how to conduct business and to be successful in it, how to run multiple streams of income and be successful in every single one. If I can look back 20, 30, 40, 50 years and find that information, then so be it. It's what works. And I'm happy about that. And so, guys, as we wrap up tonight, our show, Rochelle, I'll start with you. If you could briefly just share how one thing that you want to encourage our listening audience here tonight.
I'd like to encourage listeners to if you can remember one thing about my grandfather, Dr. A.G. Gaston, know that he was a man that believed in helping others. He didn't seek to become a rich man. He sought out to be a man to make a difference in the lives of other people. And if we can take on that attitude, put away the crab mentality and lend our helping hands out to one another. It's not always about what you can get in your hand, but how your hand can help to feel the other person's hand. And once we continue to do that, we'll see a recurring domino effect of growth, of unity, and of empowerment that will create something so great that we will all be in awe about it. And in the midst of that, because of that greatness, then other benefits are going to come. Because remember, we've got two hands. So when you're reaching one out to help another one, you've always got one in a position that's able to receive something.
I love it. I love it. Barry?
Well, you know, a lot of times when we think of Gaston, we've talked about him saying find a need and fill it, but I want to take it to another area. When Gaston was a young man in Birmingham, he attended Carrie A. Tuggle's school. And Carrie A. Tuggle would invite Booker T. Washington to come and speak to her students. And Gaston was inspired by Booker T. Washington, and primarily a part of that was the idea of thrift. The 16th Street Baptist Church, Dr. Pettiford was inspired by thrift. And Gaston came to say that a part of all you earn is yours to keep. When we start talking about these multiple streams of income, we also need to understand how to invest and how to save. And right now, in the midst of this inflation that we're all caught up in, it would help everybody to have a couple of dollars somewhere put back, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. And I would like to just remind people that in the rush to make the money, you know, don't be so quick to part from the money. And that was one of the things that A.G. Gaston said as well. A part of all you earn is yours to keep.
I love it. You know, Nicole Crenshaw Hill, she actually put that in the comments before you said it. And it's funny that you said the same thing that she just put in here. And she said, Dr. Gaston's words that my mother used to say to me all the time was a part of what you earn is yours to keep. And she said that I have passed these same words to my son. And, you know, I like that. I think that was one of, because I was so stuck on find a need and fill it. I just grabbed that one, and that was my mantra. And so, but when I heard this one, I think that's something that I'm wanting to embrace too, because, you know, sometimes when you're your own business, you're so busy making sure everybody else gets paid, you think about yourself last, or maybe none at all. And so once I started hearing that a little bit more, I started restructuring the process and the format of how my business is set up. And so I'm telling you, it's so many things. I think the Birmingham repertoire of theater, I want to say they mentioned about 20 sayings that A.G. Gaston said. And I'm thinking 20, that's all. I'm sure there's tons more, but they mentioned 20. And they were just rattling them off, just rattle, 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 rattle. And I thought that was pretty cool, too, just to hear the different sayings, and which I believe was his mantra for himself personally. So, guys, listen, I want to thank you, Barry and Rochelle, for hanging out with us. And it's my goal and desire that this live will reach just hundreds and hundreds of people, even thousands of people, so they'll learn more about the structure of A.G. Gaston, getting into his head, understanding why he did what he did and how he was able to implement those things, and then for us to learn a little bit more about the motel. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm looking to see more things about what they plan to do with that as well. So again, Barry and Rochelle both, thank you for coming back in the ladies' room. As I told them earlier, you guys, neither one of you are any strangers. Now, Rochelle, we play in here a little bit more than Barry does. We got to get him in here a little bit more. But Rochelle and I, we get in here several times and play. But Barry, again, you know, we know now you don't have a problem with hanging out in the ladies' room and telling your fellas that you've been in the ladies' room too. So we feel good about that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us inside the Ladiez Room Talk Show. Remember, we come on every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're listening to us right now, take this live and share it with your group. Share it on your personal feed. Put it in your story, because this is a great show and very historical. And this is information that not only you need to know, but you need to pass it on to your family and friends. Again, thank you always for your support. Always tuning in inside the Ladiez Room Talk Show. Have a great night and stay the course. Good night.
Step into the ladies' room with Clarissa.